Denver Broncos are heading to sunny Los Angeles as 4.5-point underdogs with a 45.5-point over-under to take on the Los Angeles Chargers. My name is Adam Wilde. I'm hosting today for sharpfootballanalysis.com. This is the DraftKings Showdown slate, so Broncos country. Let's ride right into it. The first player we're going to talk about is Austin Ekeler. He is priced all the way at the top at $11,400, the highest priced player on the slate. Something that's usually given to those top receivers. Your Cooper Kupps, your Justin Jeffersons are now given to Austin Ekeler, who is the RB1 in PPR over the last 3 weeks, if I recall correctly. He's getting it done just enough in the receiving game. I know 2 weeks ago, I think he had 9 targets. Last week and 3 weeks ago, he had 5 or 4. So getting just enough done to consider him in these Justin Herbert stacks that we're going to discuss here soon. But it's also going to be okay to play Austin Ekeler if, gosh forbid, you end up on the Denver Broncos stacks. But we're going to try to go with 4 or 5 of the Chargers. After all, this is the third time that we've played the Denver Broncos on Showdown Slate, and we kind of got a feel for it at this point. The Denver Broncos are passing at a high enough rate, but they're just not completing enough of their passes. I don't know if it's an issue with Russell Wilson connecting with his receivers. We'll get to Courtland Sutton soon. He's one of the top receivers in the league in target share, and just they're not connecting. So Austin Ekeler at 11,400 on this slate actually makes a ton of sense. He's perfectly viable with or without Justin Herbert, which brings us to Justin Herbert, who is pretty much going to be the key to the slate. I'll have him in just about every lineup. He's been having moderate production, not quite the season that we've expected from him, but he has a very condensed target tree, so it's going to be pretty easily to figure out how to stack him in a unique way. One of those ways is going to be with Mike Williams. Actually, Mike Williams at captain. I noted in the article that Mike Williams in every game this year that he's had over 10 targets has reached 100 yards. And that's just because opposite of Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert's actually completing like a huge percentage of his passes. So Mike Williams, every time he's getting the targets, he's having huge games. He's hit the 100-yard bonus 3 times. He's caught a touchdown in each of those, I think. So Mike Williams, when he's on, and that's been 3 of the 5 weeks he's been on. So Mike Williams at captain for the salary relief, because we've got Mike Williams at $800 less than Austin Ekeler, and then excluding Ekeler to go down to one of the cheaper guys is kind of a build that I'm going to work around for a single entry. That brings us to Russell Wilson. Hey, one of these weeks, if he puts it all together, all jokes aside, he's going to be fine, right? I mean, he's top 10 in red zone attempts. So they're getting to the red zone. They're passing to the in the red zone. They're just not converting. At some point, variance, right? That favorite word of all of ours is going to strike, and Russell Wilson's going to have a big game, but he is yet to have a game in which he's hit the bonus and thrown for multiple touchdowns. He hit the bonus once, he threw for multiple touchdowns one time, but mostly we're getting 0 or 1 touchdowns in around 250 yards. It's kind of tough to reach the optimal lineup, especially at 10,000. So I don't think that I'm going to be investing in Russell Wilson heavily here, but he is getting the opportunities that he needs to find success. That brings us to Courtland Sutton, who is great salary relief. I mean, Courtland Sutton has a target share that rivals Mike Williams. Actually, it's higher than Mike Williams, and he's just not been able to connect with Russell Wilson. I prefer to lean into Courtland Sutton if I'm going to bet on the Broncos variance than actually investing entirely in Russell Wilson. After all, Russell Wilson could connect for a touchdown with Sutton and not actually end up in the optimal lineup if he doesn't do much else, which he has not done recently. So Courtland Sutton is actually a great pivot off of Mike Williams if you decide to stack Austin Ekeler and Justin Herbert. You will find that if you try to pair Ekeler, Herbert, and Williams together, just eats up a ton of salary unless you can play someone cheap at captain, but that rarely works. If we get Mike Boone without Melvin Gordon, he would be a great captain, even with the high ownership, to play Ekeler, Herbert, and Williams, and then figure out the last 2 spots to get unique. But otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to play Ekeler, Herbert, and Williams together. I like replacing Williams or Ekeler with Sutton. He has similar ceilings to at least one of those guys, and he's good salary relief. Melvin Gordon at 8,200, he pretty much jumped right into Javonte Williams' role when Javonte Williams got hurt. We only have a 1-week sample size, though, so it's very tough to say what's going to happen between Gordon and Boone, especially since Gordon is injured. Even if he plays, he's still dealing with injury. So I actually like pivoting to Boone altogether. I think that Melvin Gordon at 8,200, he's fine. He does have a good matchup, but if we're going to get 50-50 timeshare and Melvin Gordon's going to be injured as well, like, why don't we just take the discount? I mean, if it was Javonte and Melvin, we'd be all in on Melvin Gordon at 4,800. So it seems like a no-brainer to me to just try to go with Boone when he's healthier and if he's getting 50% of the workload. Maybe Melvin Gordon punches in too, but that could happen in any slate. Jerry Jeudy at 7,000, super interesting. If he were just a little bit less expensive, he would feel great. If he were more expensive, he'd be an easy fade. So DraftKings actually did a great job for once pricing on this slate, kind of making us think about these Denver players. So Jerry Jeudy is fine. He's got a reasonable market share, around 20%. It's not quite Courtland Sutton's, of course, but at 7,000, he's getting the air yards that indicate that he could have a productive game. But if I'm betting on Jerry Jeudy, I'm probably betting on Russell Wilson. If I'm betting on Sutton, I don't necessarily feel like I need to bet on Russell Wilson because so much of the Denver offense could go through Sutton. So if you land on one of those stacks with the Denver Broncos, then Jerry Jeudy fits in fantastic, and his ownership shouldn't be too terribly high either. It's going to bring us down to Josh Palmer, and we'll talk about Palmer and Everett at the same time because they've had almost exactly the same production throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. We'll say 4 for Palmer because Keenan Allen played in the first game, but Josh Palmer was a really high draft pick in terms of value in best ball and such because of the injury upside if Keenan were to miss, if Mike Williams was to miss, but he just has not quite made good on that promise. He did almost reach the bonus once. He has caught 1 touchdown, so he hasn't been complete disappointment, but he hasn't had the ceiling that we felt like he could have. However, he is getting the targets. So Josh Palmer's getting a little bit more targets than Gerald Everett, a little better target share, and he's going to get 1 more week without Keenan Allen. So Josh Palmer and Gerald Everett both fit into Charger builds well, but I will take Josh Palmer for the additional targets, especially since we should get a little bit more Donald Parham, who we'll talk about later. Mike Boone, like I said, he's a great play with Melvin Gordon. Without Melvin Gordon, he's probably going to be one more like a free square that everybody plays. And that's okay. He's fine in that situation too. Like I said, it's a great matchup. Mike Boone is getting like 3 to 4 targets a game, so that's nice as well. Either way, he's a great play. I kind of hope that Melvin Gordon plays so that we can get lower ownership on Mike Boone, but I'm playing him either way. Kickers and defense, of course, are fine. The Chargers, I prefer more for obvious reasons, but I don't think either of them are going to be egregiously owned on this slate. Chargers are a little bit more expensive, so maybe a little bit less ownership, but I don't think many people are going to be on the Broncos, and the Broncos are a fine play as well for low ownership. KJ Hamler, you're just looking for a deep ball. 3,000 is really nice for him, especially next to DeAndre Carter, who's a lot more viable. So KJ Hamler, if you're stacking Russell Wilson, you could get a deep shot out of KJ Hamler and Russell Wilson. 3,000 pretty much guarantees that there's going to be little to no ownership. But DeAndre Carter's the preferred option here at 2,600 because he's getting at least 2 catches a game. So he's got the baked in opportunity, I guess you could say. 2,600 is a little pricey for 2 catches, but it depends what he does with those 2 catches. I know he had one for like 50 and a touchdown earlier in the year. So DeAndre Carter's getting the opportunity you want to see at 2.6K. It's like 3-4 targets a game. Yes, that's plenty for that price tag. Saubert should be coming back. I wrote him up as he's back. I don't know why. He really shouldn't be priced 2K, but he definitely shouldn't be priced under Alberto. So Eric Saubert's been the starter. He had 7 targets last week. And at 2,000, I mean, he's the best pawn at the slate. I don't know any reason really that I would play Alberto. I think he only had 20% of the snaps last week. He was actually 3rd in snaps last week. So at 2,400, even for leverage, I don't think that you go there. I mean, Tomlinson actually had, I think, 10 or 15% more of the snaps than Alberto. So Alberto is pretty much a non-factor, and we're all in on Eric Saubert. Did not have that on my 2022 bingo card. Last we're going to talk about is Donald Parham, who only played 25% of the snaps last week. He had that really bad injury, and he just came back last week, so 25% is to be expected. But remember, he is a favorite target of Justin Herbert in the red zone when he's healthy. So Donald Parham is always good for a couple touchdowns on showdown slates at 1,400, especially in like 20 max or something like that. Throwing him in a couple lineups shouldn't hurt you too bad. So we'll try to jump in and build one of these lineups out. I'm going to start with Mike Williams at captain. He is my favorite captain of the slate. Justin Herbert, of course, paired with him. We're going to forego Eckler for this build. We're going to go with Sutton and Mike Boone. Try to fit in Palmer and see what we have left. 4,000. That's plenty to work with. You could go with either kicker. You could go with KJ Hamler. You could go with Eric Saubert. Lots of ways you can move this around. And if you go cheap enough, let's try Parham, then you could actually swap Herbert and Williams, it looks like. So now we could go with Herbert at captain. Mike Williams fits here. So Herbert, Williams, Sutton, Boone, Palmer, Parham. You could also go Eckler. So you could go Herbert, Eckler, Sutton, Boone, Palmer, Parham. Another thing that you could do is play Eckler at captain here. Eckler at captain, Justin Herbert. And now you've got Eckler, Herbert, Sutton, Boone, Parham, Palmer. And that leaves a good bit of salary on the table for all three. So we know that those Chargers 4-2 builds are going to be popular. So leaving a good bit of salary on the table is a good way to combat that. But that's going to do it for today. Thank you all so much for coming out. This is Showdown Coverage brought to you by SharpFootballAnalysis.com. And I will catch you next week. Peace.